Welcome to you all. This is our very first episode of INNERchamber Connections for the 2021-22 season. I'm delighted today to have two special guests with me. We've got Liesel Deppe on flute. Hello, Liesel.
Hello, Andrew.
We've got Julia Seager-Scott on harp. Hi, Julia.
Hi.
So great of you both to join me, as seeing I am not in this very first program, the program that's on September 19th, and I need to know more about it. So this is great that you could join me for a chat. So let's go to how this concert came to be. I think, like so many of these INNERchamber concerts, we start with one of our core players, and in this case, it was Liesel, who had the honors of sort of starting, to figure out, hey, what do I want to play? And then it sort of grows and manifests from there. So Liesel, how did this go? How did this program come about?
Well, every year you say to me, Liesel, what would you like to do? And this past year I said, I love to play with harp. And since we've done a flute and harp concert, which I believe was actually almost 10 years ago now. And the usual combination is flute, harp, and viola. So that's
a Debussy piece, right? That's Debussy trio.
And there are a couple of other ones, but Debussy is the big one. So we didn't want to repeat that repertoire, but we wanted to use the same people, but also make it a little more interesting and something that people haven't really heard before. And then, of course, we have the fantastic Peter Shackleton in town. And so we added him to the program. And so now we have a quartet of two wind players and essentially two string players.
And it's just not any harpist. It's Julia Seager-Scott.
Yeah.
OMG. No, she's fantastic. And the last time we saw both of you were in a program together, going back to just December last year in a program with Alexis Gordon. I think we called it Safe and Warm, and it was certainly warming to the heart. So Julia, I guess that during COVID, there hasn't been much harp playing, I'm surmising. And what do you do during this time? I mean, have there been many gigs? Have there not been many gigs? Or
Well, I'm a freelancer, so it's different for me than it is for someone who's in a symphony, for example, or in a bigger organization. So for me personally, the last big gig that I did was with you guys for the Safe and Warm concert.
There you go.
I am thrilled to be back.
Yeah.
It's been a challenging winter. I've been really lucky to have a couple of meaty projects right now. Mm-hmm. And I just realized what I have missed. There's quite it's almost like missing some of your senses.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, are you a practice every day kind of harpist? I don't know that many harpists.
I am not. I've learned a lot about myself in COVID. I am not a practice everyday harpist. A lot of my brass player friends are. I was actually just talking to somebody last night about this, and he said he's terrified that if he doesn't play every day, he won't be able to play. But I'm not like that. I'm a very deadline oriented, concert oriented person. So I realized that about myself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to play if I have a project. So I didn't do a ton of playing. I had little gigs here and there. And I've recently been playing for a yoga class outside, which has been very unusual and awesome.
Love it.
But I have not actually worked with other human beings. I've been playing solo. I don't have other musicians in my house. Mm-hmm. So I've been playing solo, and we had a really fantastic experience. Liesel came over to do a rehearsal with me, and I actually hadn't played with another musician for so long. And when you're accompanying someone, you have this sort of ESP feeling about like if they're going to slow down the tempo or speed up the tempo or breathe somewhere. And I just take that for granted. That's just been something I am good at and do all the time as an accompanist. Mm-hmm. And Liesel and I were playing, and it's like I lost my ESP. And I was like, oh my God, like,
momentarily, you
oh
found
yeah,
it very
thank
quickly.
goodness. She was so calm. She was like, nope, I know that feeling. Don't worry, you'll get it back. And sure enough, the next time we played that phrase, it was back.
Well, it's a series of muscles and brain muscles. You know, I don't know what the brain has
like
a muscle, but anyway.
It's like a sense though. Like you don't expect to lose your sense of smell. Well, I guess in COVID, you can say that, but you don't expect to lose a sense. And so it was so relieving. I'm almost kind of glad I lost it for a second because it really showed me how important it is to be working with people, actual live people.
And it's part of what makes chamber music so fun. Absolutely. It's just that, you know, following each other, and then, you know, someone takes the lead and another person, and
it's essential.
It is. Yeah, it is. But then it, you know, it goes into atrophy a little bit when it's not used. And I'm very much a person, you know, I practice for the gig. I'll admit it, you know.
Yay, another person like me.
But I think that maybe for wind and brass players, it's a little different. Like you know, you got to keep your armature up, and that's my guess. Is that right, Liesel? Is it?
Yeah, I think brass players have that a little bit more. I mean, we do the same for wind players. It's more a matter of the endurance in those muscles because, you know, we use our hand muscles for everyday use, but we don't quite use our mouth muscles the same way every day like we do.
Yeah.
So those can get a little stiff.
Good point. And then, Julia, you just came off of a recording session, did you, with Tefl Music?
Yep.
Robert Atelier.
And thank goodness I'd had that experience with Liesel the week before of losing my ESP and getting her back because I needed it full tilt this week. So thankfully it was there.
Oh, so glad. So glad. Yeah. Now, I think that one of the first pieces that was programmed on this was the Schumann. So this is the Fantasiestücke, and originally for clarinet and piano, and then very much in INNErchamber style, we have created I have had nothing to do with it. Ben Bolt Martin created an arrangement for this group of 4 players. What do you think? Is it you don't know what you think yet because you haven't even met together, all 4 of you.
Well, actually, we kind of do. I mean, we haven't done it live together, but there is. It was actually Jody who found an arrangement for very similar instruments. It's basically the same instrumentation, just 2 violas. So Ben rearranged it to take one of the viola parts and distribute it. So there are some.
I got a lot of viola parts.
Yeah.
And if Jody's watching, that's the best thing that could ever happen to you, right? I mean,
Jody doesn't need to play 2 viola parts at once. She's got enough to do.
Tremendous. That's a
so
beautiful.
I guess the answer is yes and no.
Yes. Okay. I got it. And then I guess you guys have brainstormed on Zoom to come up with the program, and you talked about different repertoire. I love the way these things all materialize, you know. It might be with like we were saying, the ensemble comes first, and then you do your research and you figure, okay, well, what's really out there? And there's some well-known stuff and then stuff that's been arranged. And then it seems that there's a little bit of duo work in this concert.
Yeah, I love the different colors. Each instrument brings its own color. So I'm very interested in hearing the combinations of the colors. So duos, I'm lucky I get to play a duo with everybody. And then trios of different combinations, some with harp, some without. And then of course we have the Schumann, which brings it all together.
It's cool. And so what is this about playing with different people? And I mean, I guess that I don't want to call you an accompanist. You're a collaborative harpist, right? And you're working with each of these individuals, and you're just as important, let's say, to the other instrumentalists as the other instrumentalists. But how is it different playing with, say, Jody, violist, the sense of gesture from a string player, as to a wind player like Liesel or Peter?
I think the most obvious answer is the breath, because if you're playing a wind instrument, you have to breathe. So that will inform your phrasing and your choices. And it also slightly as the foundation, as the blah, 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 blah. I play a lot of quick sort of making a bed of sound. It informs, as you're not just playing like a typewriter, you actually have to have a little flow, ebb and flow as someone's going to breathe and then carry on. Whereas with viola, you have a little more flexibility in that the line can keep going. You don't have to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the most obvious difference. What do you think, Liesel?
No, I agree. I think, we have to accommodate the breath at times and sort of structure the phrasing around that. Not that any other instrumentalists or musicians don't breathe. I think they do. Their music does breathe. But I think for us, it's just a little bit more obvious. But for them, I think for string players, that's what I mean by them. I think they have more arm gestures, which we don't, potentially, which might be more helpful.
I love the way wind players breathe and phrase as a result. They phrase and I've always found that very informative, because it's right. Like, essentially we just go from one bow to the next, and string players can, spin a phrase for forever, but that gets awfully boring awfully quickly.
It does. And I think when you have you can do circular breathing on a wind instrument, but I find myself really wanting to hear the phrases a bit more, and you sit there and you go, please breathe.
Right. Yeah. And when we were talking, Julia, it also is informed by that person's personality, right?
Oh, totally. Yes. Yeah. Somebody will play a phrase or have a musical idea that is different than another person who plays the same instrument. And also how you work in rehearsal is different. There's always somebody in the group, we'll see who it is this time, who's the intonation person. They're going to be picky about intonation, right? Oh, that wasn't in tune. And there's always someone in the group who's very picky about the rhythm. Oh, that wasn't together, So all the personalities work together to make it.
And then some people more forceful than others in their opinions. I'm not saying anything about
always
you, of course, but there's always a loudmouth in the room. Always.
Yeah.
Cool. So in this program, then, Julia, you're playing parts that are, in my view, seem to be piano parts, but there's a bit of a history to that, right? So
yeah. I was thinking about this since we last spoke, and there's always been this sort of unspoken, whatever the piano can play, the harp can play throughout history. I play historical harps, and they didn't even start labeling the parts as harp parts until about the 1600s. And even then it's very sporadic. Sometimes they specifically say harp, but most of the time they don't. We play a lot of keyboard music. And it's really interesting to me because it is challenging to play keyboard music on the harp. There are we work in this sort of plane as opposed to this plane, and our string spacing is not always uniform, whereas the keys are uniform. So if you're jumping around on the piano, you always kind of know where home base is, where you are. Whereas in the harp, once you leave the harp, you're free form. You have to really, jumping is very challenging for us. And also playing repeated notes is very challenging for us.
So wait a second. So the harp parts didn't start getting marked until the 1600s, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and even then it was sporadic, but it was sort of this understood in musical culture that a harp can play whatever piano does. But I'm saying as a performer, that's not actually true. We do modify the piano parts to suit our instrument. And it's just not, it's never written down or really talked about. But I know as harpists, we're constantly rearranging our parts.
Right.
And do you use fewer fingers?
Yeah, we do. Sorry, I didn't quite hear you. Yes. So we don't ever use our baby fingers. So we use 8 fingers. So the patterns of arpeggios on a harp, for example, are made in a harpist's view are made of 8 notes, not 10 notes. So it actually is quite interesting how it changes your thinking. And it's basically, I find playing piano music pretty awkward, but I'm used to organizing the patterns differently or leaving out a note here. Or
so you've got a set of tricks that kind of
yeah,
decode it and make it work. Is that it?
yeah. So I think we just do that as harpists, and we don't really ever talk about it.
Right. You suffer in silence. Is that what you're saying?
I think a little bit, yeah.
Poor things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that it's not, it would be a very difficult translation to go from one to the other. And then Ben has broken up that piano part of the Schumann just to make it even more tricky.
Yeah, but actually, it's actually working well because Ben really understands harp. He's written arrangements for harp before, like in the concert we did in December.
Mhm.
They were all his arrangements, if I'm not mistaken, and they're phenomenal. So he really understands the harp intuitively, and so it makes it better for me. I'd much rather be working with an arranger who actually knows that than someone who doesn't really know. So.
Yeah, I get it. So in this program, there's a bunch of music that's well known, well recorded. You can get a sense of it just from doing a simple YouTube search or looking at your CD library. But then there's a bunch of stuff also that's quite obscure. So what about this process? The difference in how you prepare something. I mean, we talked about this a little bit earlier about just the way we prepare. I know that when I personally prepare stuff, I tend to go for a little bit of recording, historical record. I'll listen a couple of times, then I'll take it to the instrument, and then I'll look at the part and kind of break it down and like just figure out for me what makes sense, phrasing, shaping, what fingering I'll choose, that kind of thing. And then I'd probably bring it to ensemble after that and don't consult the recording too much after that. But I'm just curious what you guys do and what you did for this program.
Julia, do you want to go first?
Nah, Liesel, you go first.
Yeah, Liesel, you go first. I've done a lot of talking.
Well, that's okay. I do want you to sort of weigh into because I think we all have slightly different approaches. I mean, for me, recordings are helpful just to figure out, well, phrasing, especially if I want to solve a problem and I know my phrasing isn't working, then I will listen to a recording. But I usually listen to recording, first of all, to just get an idea of the tempi that are out there. How many performers are out there, who's done it, what tempo have they chosen. So that's my main reason for doing that. And then secondly is just to get an idea of phrasing or to, like I said, solve some phrasing problems. And as I've mentioned to you earlier, one of the things I love doing when I prepare for orchestral performances, I actually will connect my laptop or sometimes put a CD in the player and I will play the music through the stereo system and I will play along. So, so that sort of gives me the feeling of being in the ensemble and I'm practicing. It's almost like the choreography of it, of getting ready, the breathing, getting the whole setup ready.
Well, in orchestral environments, I mean, the expectation is that you meet, I don't know, say on a Thursday and you're doing this concert by Saturday. So the expectation is that you have it internalized, how it fits together with the other parts. And yeah, I totally get it. Wanting to feel that sense of anticipation that what's coming
it's a
next.
Time saver.
What's that, sorry?
It's a time saver.
Yeah, a time saver. But Julia, you have quite a different approach.
Yeah, I do. And just before I talk about that, I'll just say that I think I would imagine in the era before recordings were ubiquitous, that a lot of we would have longer to prepare for an orchestral concert. I think a lot of that rehearsal was built in so that you got comfortable with the ensemble. And I think with the advent of recordings being everywhere, people actually expect us to like basically shorten we do our prep time at home. We do much more at home. And I would argue that's unpaid prep time. And then we come together.
What was that? Unpaid
prep time. And then we come together for, a brief time and we put it together. And I think that's actually really only possible because of recordings being available.
Yeah.
So my process, I don't know. I mostly don't want to listen to the recording until I have an idea of the piece myself. And I don't know why I work that way. I just have always done that. I think maybe I'm a bit worried about being influenced by someone. And also it's not like there are 10 different harpists recording these pieces. Like, for example, this Ibert piece that we're playing is quite obscure. I had never heard of it before Liesel mentioned it. And so there aren't that many recordings. So I think I'm worried about stealing someone's interpretation or something. So I want to have a good grounding in my own self about how I feel the piece should go. And I work out my own fingers and my own pedals. And then I'll listen to a recording.
Yeah.
And then I'll do what Liesel does, actually. I mean, one of my favorite things, I was preparing to play the Nutcracker with the National Ballet many years ago. And I was playing with Valery Gergiev, and it was like amazing. He was super, super, super fast, but I felt like I was part of this orchestra. So it was exciting. It is fun to feel like you're playing with the Vienna Philharmonic or, some European orchestra, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
so
it
I do
prepares
that
you to
sometimes.
go faster or slower pace, and it's about that. It's playing with those variables. Yeah, it's just so fascinating to me. People prepare so differently for things, and there's no one way, and it can feel rewarding. But at the end, at the end of the day, you just want to feel comfort, right? Going to that first rehearsal, you want to feel rock solid and comfortable with your colleagues that you can contribute.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Liesel or Andrew, but I find if I have a base for my own solo contribution to the group, when I hear the different parts, it's almost like adding another layer, and then I tend to need to readjust my own stuff. So, for example, I'll make some silly mistakes because I'm really listening to the flute or the clarinet or the viola, and then I almost have to consolidate everything and sort of. So I like to have a good base before I go into that process. And then, it does help everything come together quickly.
And that's when your ESP kicks in.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't have ESP with a recording, really.
No, we can't. And so this is our first concert of the season coming up here. So how were you all feeling COVID-wise and everything? Gosh, it takes an adjustment, hey, to get we're given this messaging that we have to be really cautious and careful, and then we have to come together and trust each other, be in close proximity, and everyone in the room is going to be double vaxxed. And how are you two feeling in terms of comfortability?
Liesel?
I would say, because I know everybody, it feels quite comfortable. I will admit it's slightly weird the first time when you meet, and especially when you're still wearing masks, and then you take them off to play, because I need to take it off to play. And then suddenly you see faces you haven't seen in months. So it's slightly jarring, but it's amazing how quickly that comes, that feeling comes back. But then, like I said, there's just trust. It's similar to the musical trust, trusting in friends and colleagues musically. And I think, we all know each other pretty well and trust each other for that too, and not to do dumb things.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. I think it's knowing that everyone's double vaccinated and trusting everyone to, not go partying with 1,000 strangers the night before the rehearsal, you know, that kind of thing. You do sort of know each other's habits and things. So
Yes.
yeah, I agree with that. And I just have to say again, which is what we opened with, like having been just playing by myself in my house or occasionally outside, like working with other people is essential to me. It is such a relief to play with my colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels so good. I feel like my true self. So it's been really great. Really looking forward to.
Because it was so difficult before. It felt a couple months ago, it felt like this was never going to end.
Mm-hmm.
And it really affects us. I think it affects our moods, or
Absolutely.
our identities are caught up in this.
Yeah, I've been a lot less irritable this week, let me tell you.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. Oh yeah, I think I was at my wit's end, gosh, near the end of June or something. But boy, I'm really looking forward to this, and being in the room with you guys, and being able to take in this concert. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for asking us to come and speak.
Great. So this is in the autumn. It's September 19th at 7 o'clock at our restaurant venue partner, Revival House. You can get tickets online, of course, and we're doing live streaming as well as some availability for in-person seating. All the details are on the website. And this concert will kick off at 7 o'clock in the evening, and this pre-concert chat will be airing at 6:30. So thanks again, Liesel, and thanks again, Julia.
Take care.